welcome back to Boots Over Heels, a Southern Grace clothing podcast with me, your host, Jade, based here at Southern Grace's headquarters in Dallas, Texas. This week, I have a story for you, and it's about a mother and her daughter, an argument, a possible date, and a homecoming dress. Welcome to Hannah's homecoming dress. The Holloways live in Louisiana, Shreveport to be exact. Barbara and Jeremy moved there 3 years ago so they could start a family as they planned. They had their daughter Hannah and their son Howard. Hannah was 16 now and Howard was turning 12 soon, and Barbara and Jeremy couldn't believe how fast time had gone by. Barbara and Jeremy loved their children so much, and they were proud of everything their children did. Hannah and Howard loved their parents right back, and they were happy that these were the parents they were lucky enough to have. Sure, Howard had an unhealthy love of Dr. Pepper, and Barbara was constantly losing her glasses, and Jeremy often forgot whatever it was you just mentioned to him, and Hannah sometimes played her music too loud, but the family was close and they generally got along. The times they didn't get along, though, the Holloways weren't exactly sure what to do when that happened. You see, Barbara and Hannah didn't always see eye to eye. If there were disagreements, if there were arguments, if there was ever yelling in the Holloway house, it was between Hannah and Barbara. On Hannah's part, she often felt her mom was judgmental, and she felt like her mom didn't understand her choices, didn't understand her. From Hannah's perspective, her mom often made no effort to like the things that she liked, and in fact, it felt like her mom tended to put down her hobbies. Sure, Hannah's hobbies could be a little odd, and she knew her mom was confused by them. She loved black, she loved heavy metal, she loved big hair. She and her friend Mindy would call each other every day and play video games and laugh at memes and make fun of bad movies. Her mom didn't like to do any of that. Her mom was from a different generation and she didn't understand that Hannah wasn't going through some phase. She just was this way. Hannah wished that her mom could be more understanding, that she could try to like the things that Hannah likes. From Barbara's perspective, she wished she knew what was going on in Hannah's head. Barbara's little girl who used to wear pink dresses and loved teddy bears and gymnastics had become a strange sort of hermit. She only wore black. She blasted music about death and sadness. She watched stupid videos on the internet, and she never went outside anymore. She only had one friend, and that friend had barely said 2 words to Barbara in the last 2 years. Barbara worried about Hannah. She worried that Hannah wasn't liked at her school. She worried that she was mocked or made fun of because of what she wore. Barbara worried that any future boys Hannah brought home might be frightening or dark. She worried that her daughter may in fact have some sort of depression, and even if she did, would Hannah tell Barbara? Barbara thought probably not. Barbara was always trying so hard, and Hannah reacted so poorly to everything she said. They could barely have a conversation, and it was crushing Barbara that her little girl seemed to hate her so much now. Both Hannah and Barbara were upset with how things were going, and neither of them knew how to fix it. Instead, they went about their lives and they ignored the issues they seemed to be having, and they both hoped that things would get better with time. And if they didn't, well, they didn't like to think about that. On Jeremy and Howard's part, they mostly stayed out of the way, and each boy talked to his womanly counterpart and offered advice and support. Of course, they did it a little differently. Jeremy suggested new ways to communicate, new activities to do with each other. And Howard's only suggestion was usually a duel to the death, or maybe, more seriously he would say this, a trip to the water park. Who could be mad on a trip to the water park? Both boys meant well, if they affected very little. Barbara and Hannah had just had their worst argument ever the night before. The ladies had devolved into a screaming match, pointing and name-calling. Barbara had called her daughter ungrateful and naive, and Haley had called her mom crazy, old, and she even called her a freak at one point, she thought. From Hannah's perspective, she had come to dinner not feeling particularly hungry, and then her mom had screamed at her for not eating enough, which wasn't fair at all. It was perfectly fine that she couldn't scarf down an entire plate of meatloaf, and she didn't understand why her mom freaked out at her about it. For Barbara, she had made meatloaf since it used to be Hannah and Howard's favorite. She thought maybe she could entice the kids to watch a movie after dinner or play a game, instead of hiding in their rooms. So she made it with extra glaze and extra buttery mashed potatoes, and then she watched Hannah stomp into the dining room in her black tights and her black top, and she watched her sigh and poke at the meatloaf. Howard had liked it, but Hannah seemed just annoyed by its presence, and eventually, after 20 minutes of Hannah pushing around the food on her plate, Barbara had lost her temper. It ended with Barbara sending Hannah to her room, both women closing their bedroom doors with tears in their eyes. Hannah sat on her bed with its black sheets and the starry sky comforter and realized that things would never change, that her mom would probably never understand her. And Barbara sat down on her own bed with cream sheets and a quilted blanket that she had sewed herself and realized that she had to work to change things between the two of them, that the girls would need to start understanding each other. Barbara thought she would make it happen. So the morning after their argument, Hannah decided she didn't care anymore what her mom said or did or tried to do with her. She was just going to let things go. And Barbara, the next morning, found out about homecoming. Barbara was checking her weekly email from Hannah's school, which usually gives updates on events, information about the teachers, recommendations for students. She usually honestly kind of skimmed it, but this time she saw homecoming written in all caps in the subject line. So she opened the email. Apparently, there was a homecoming dance this Thursday at Hannah's school. Barbara had always loved the homecoming dances when she was in high school. It was where she and Jeremy had gone on their first date, and she was always so grateful for the memories her homecoming dances had given her. She and her friends went dancing, they took pictures, they stopped for snacks, they stayed out past curfew. Barbara laughed a little at the memory of her mother's angry and terrible face when she realized that she had missed her curfew. Back then, of course, Barbara had been terrified, but now it was pretty funny. Barbara sighed. Hannah had never even been to a dance. She said they were stupid, and maybe they were, but Barbara also thought they were important. They were important for meeting people, for making memories. She worried again that Haley's life was passing her by in her little bedroom with its four walls and nothing else. And Barbara had an idea. When Hannah came downstairs, her mom was in the kitchen and her brother and her dad were eating at the table already. Hannah tried to reach in and grab an orange from the kitchen and leave without any conversation from her mom, but her mom saw her. "Hannah!" Hannah stopped, a bit confused. Her mom's tone was happy, ecstatic even. Right after their argument, Hannah was confused. She waited for her mom to go on. "I had the best idea this morning. Did you know that your homecoming is on Thursday?" Hannah instantly panicked. "Oh, Mom, please no." "No what?" Barbara asked. She hadn't even gotten to her idea yet. "Please don't make me go. I don't want to go." Barbara was a little sad, but she pushed forward. "Well, I don't want to make you, honey, but I do think it would be a good idea." "It's not," Hannah replied. "I think it is," Barbara said, sticking to her guns. She handed Hannah an orange and a plate of eggs and followed her to the table where Hannah's dad and brother were pretending like they weren't listening to their conversation. Hannah stuck her tongue out at her brother, who crossed his eyes at her. Barbara didn't notice any of this. "I loved my homecomings, honey, and I think it could be really fun. You could go with your friends and dance the night away. You could even bring a date." "But dances are stupid, Mom. I don't want to go." "But how would you know?" Barbara responded. "You've never even been to one." "I know I don't want to, Mom, no." Barbara continued, "But I could help you. We could pick out a dress. I could help with makeup and your hair. It'd be so fun." And then Hannah slapped the table. "Mom, please, just stop. I'm not going." Hannah instantly regretted her words as she watched her mom, and her face just fell. She nodded sadly and she looked down at her plate of eggs. Hannah's brother and dad were looking at her with sad and hurt-filled eyes. But Hannah didn't want to go, and she decided that she was going to ignore her mom. "Okay," Barbara said softly. She looked close to tears. "I just thought it could be good to..." "Never mind. Let's finish breakfast." And Hannah's resolve to ignore her mom crumbled, only a little. And that was how Hannah agreed to go to homecoming. It was also why Hannah was so uncomfortable the next day. She whisked Hannah to the mall, which she hated, and Hannah had to cancel her plans with Mindy that night, and Mindy had seemed so sad about it. Hannah was already in a bad mood when her mom dragged her to some froofy store, and now she was standing in a bright pink monstrosity of a dress. This was the third dress that Hannah had tried on that her mom had picked, and she'd hated all of them. The first one had been too old-fashioned, the second one too young-looking, and this one just had the worst color. Hannah pouted in her mirror, her mom smiling behind her. Barbara had been excited to shop with Hannah all day, and it was going terribly. Hannah hated everything that Barbara picked out, and Hannah was barely speaking. She was pouting and grumpy and sighing at every small thing. But Barbara was determined that this would go well. So she wasn't reacting. Barbara was going to smile until it hurt, and she was going to ignore the sighing, and she had told herself that today, smiling was the only thing she was allowed to do. She would not have this go poorly. "What do you think?" Barbara asked. "I think the color looks nice on you." "Mom, it's an insane color. I look like a Barbie." Hannah sighed once again, and Barbara took a deep breath. She wouldn't get upset. She'd think of a different tactic. "Okay, well, how about you pick out one? Any one you want. Let's look around together. How does that sound?" "Mom, seriously?" Barbara tried hard not to feel crushed. She'd been so excited for this afternoon. She tried to think of what Hannah would like. She tried to focus instead on how to make this better, how to fix it. "Well, do you want to go shopping with Mindy instead? You two girls could go without me bothering you. We could pick her up right now." Hannah was surprised at her mom's kind idea because her mom usually didn't like Mindy that much. But Hannah kept her eyes on her toes to hide her blush. I think Mindy and I were gonna surprise each other with our outfits, like make it a fun thing." She glanced quickly at her mom and then away at the racks of dresses. Barbara noticed the blush and the comment, and she realized something she'd never thought of before. She smiled. "Well, that's a cute idea," she said, looking at the dress racks. "Really? You think so?" Hannah said. "For sure. Let's look around for a dress that might surprise her, huh? What do you think Mindy would like?" Hannah was a little more interested now, and she was watching her mom carefully, but she was also smiling and looking at the dresses. "Well, she likes purple," Hannah said, and her mother smiled a big smile at her. "Great idea. Let's look for a purple one." Hannah smiled back, feeling weird, but a little good too. "Okay, let's look." Hannah and Barbara looked around and found two purple dresses. The one Hannah found was a dark purple with ruching up the sides. It was short and cute and a little spunky. The one Barbara found was a paler purple, almost lavender. It had a sweetheart neckline and it was long and flowing, very formal. Hannah instantly wasn't sure about it, but she tried it on anyway because her mom was in a good mood and she did not want to ruin it. The one that Hannah liked was fun and interesting. Her mom clearly wasn't a big fan, but she also didn't say she didn't like it, so Hannah put it in the maybe pile. She would try on the lavender dress and be nice, and hopefully they'd go with Hannah's choice. She thought Mindy would like it. But when Hannah put on the lavender dress, she was actually pleasantly surprised. It was comfier than the other one, and the length really suited her height. She came out of the dressing room, and her mom started clapping. "Oh, I love it! You look amazing!" Hannah blushed again, but she actually liked the dress more now that her mom seemed so excited about it. "I don't know," Hannah said. "What is it? Do you think it's a bit plain?" "A little, maybe." "Well, we can always add jewelry and dress it up. Or what about this?" Barbara had been looking around while Hannah was changing, and she had found a stretchy black belt made of leather-ish material. And Barbara hated it, but she thought that Hannah might like it. And surprisingly, she was right. "Mom, where'd you find that? It's so cute." "Really?" Barbara was shocked she'd gotten it right, and she suggested, "Why don't you try it with the dress? It may look a little..." But she didn't finish the thought because Hannah had put on the belt and it actually didn't look too bad. The black was dark with the lavender, and it wasn't an outfit Barbara would ever wear, but it accentuated Hannah's waist nicely, and the best part was Hannah was smiling a big smile as she looked in the mirror. And Barbara had done something right. "This would for sure surprise Mindy," Hannah said. "Then let's get it." They walked out of the store both smiling, a big change from just a couple days before, and it felt nice to both of them. The day of homecoming had some bumps in the road. Barbara helped Hannah get ready after school, and the boys worked their hardest to drown out the noise of their squabbles. They argued about her hair. Hannah wanted it down. She wanted it gelled. She wanted it straight. Barbara thought an updo would match the dress better. They argued about Hannah's eyeliner, which Barbara thought was unnecessary and Hannah deemed entirely necessary. Barbara suggested heels, and for some reason, Hannah wanted to wear her boots. Both girls were flabbergasted, and both were thinking that their peaceful day of shopping together may have simply been a fluke. In the end, Hannah wore her hair down, and she wore her eyeliner, but she caved to a small heel that her mom had picked out for her instead of the boots. And when Hannah had gotten all dressed up, they both smiled at how she looked. Sure, both of them weren't fans of certain parts of the outfit, the opposite parts, but when it all came together, Hannah thought she looked exceptionally nice. Different than usual, but nice. And Barbara wholeheartedly agreed. On their way out the door to the car, her dad and her brother swamped her outside and demanded pictures. Hannah rolled her eyes and she crossed her arms, but she also laughed at the photo shoot that they had in front of their garage door, and the Holloways were all happy and smiling as Hannah and her mom pulled away to drop Hannah off at the school. "You excited?" Barbara asked, trying to make conversation. "I think so. I still think it might be lame." "Well, even if it is, it's fun to say you've done it. Make some memories." Hannah just nodded. "You know, I went to my homecoming dance with your father." Hannah was actually surprised. "Really?" "Yes, it was one of our first dates. He looked dapper. Dapper and dorky, but still dapper." Hannah laughed at the thought of her dad looking both dapper and dorky at the same time. "Who would have guessed back then that we'd get married and have 2 beautiful children?" "Pretty crazy. It's cute that you guys went together," Hannah said. "I have some great memories from that night. Ours was actually a little lame too. Terrible music." Hannah laughed again. "Really?" "Oh yeah," Barbara nodded. "Dances are always a little lame. That's part of why they're great. The best time to make memories is when you're young. It's also one of the best ways to make connections with friends." Barbara parked the car outside Hannah's school and they looked out the window. Both of the girls saw Mindy waiting outside next to her mom. Mindy was wearing a classic black gown and the same boots that Hannah had tried to wear. Barbara laughed at the matching boots. "And dates," Barbara finished. Hannah glanced at her mom with surprise, and Barbara gave her a knowing smile. Hannah shyly smiled back at her. Hannah and Barbara walked up to the waiting pair, and the girls spoke and the moms demanded pictures of the 2 of them. Both girls blushed and they protested, but the moms got some cute pictures that they would keep for a long while. The girls said goodbye to their moms, and the moms laid out a curfew that Barbara hoped would be broken. The girls started to walk away, but Hannah turned around and came back to Barbara and gave her a hug, which Barbara happily returned. "Love you, Mom. Thanks for making me come." "I love you too. See you soon." The girls walked off arm in arm, laughing. Mindy's mom turned to Barbara. "I hope they have a good time. They sure are cute together, aren't they?" "They really are," Barbara said. And that was Hannah's homecoming dress. What mother and daughter don't fight? What daughter and mother have the exact same sense of style or music or hobbies? Hannah and Barbara clearly don't see eye to eye on everything, but they're so much more alike than either of them realize. Life isn't always clear-cut, and in all of our relationships, we will all occasionally disagree with people that we care about. And I think most of the time, nothing is irreparable as long as you have an open mind and you try your best to be understanding. Of course, it's not always easy. It's not perfect. Sometimes it means going to a dance you never wanted to go to, or wearing a black belt with a lavender dress, which I have to be honest, I would never do. But some openness, some understanding, some compromises with the people we care about can actually bring about good and healthy changes. I hope that after this episode, maybe in the future, you might try to put yourself in your sisters', in your mother's, in your friends', your neighbors' shoes, and try a little openness and understanding. Almost nothing bad comes from that behavior, and I truly think the world can always use a little bit more kindness. Also, I'm not saying you can't wear a black belt with a lavender dress. Wear what you like, of course, but maybe not a black belt with a lavender dress. Just my opinion. Anyway, thank you for tuning in, ladies. Please subscribe and review our podcast, and if you want more Boots Over Heels, follow us on Southern Grace for sneak peeks updates, and more. And also, remember to walk through life with empathy and kindness, and call your mom whenever you can. I'll talk with you ladies again next Thursday, and thank you for listening to Boots Over Heels, the podcast that understands Southern women because we are Southern women. Bye, ladies!